Hello again and welcome back for another edition of London Direct. We now know that the US economy continues to add jobs rapidly, also that OPEC will maintain production for the foreseeable future. What we don't know is if Greece will remain within the Eurozone. To find out what this all means for the markets, I've been speaking with James Hughes from eToro. James, we had these job numbers on Friday. What do you think that means for the Fed?
Well, I think the Fed, we're looking at, of course, pushing this potential moving rates into 2016, I think, despite a really good number from the non-farm payroll. And of course, we've always had these plus 200,000 numbers. They've been like this for a long time. So moving to 280 is an incredibly good number. But whether that necessarily means we're looking at a rate hike this year or not, I personally don't think we are. I think we're looking at 2016 for these rate hikes. And there's a lot of people talking that September is the date, and when you look at these surveys of analysts that we always see, it looks like we are potentially looking at that date. But I just don't see the market being ready to move that to this point. Okay, the non-farm payroll number is good, but are the other numbers good enough? And we already know that the non-farm payroll and jobs reports aren't necessarily they're not the ones we have to look at for a rate hike. They're good, yes, but it's not just about jobs when we come to the US.
I found it really interesting that Barack Obama was speaking about the strength of the dollar. In terms of verbal intervention, do you think it's becoming a more common theme in terms of the dollar? It seems very strange that the leader of the free world is talking about dollar strength.
Yeah. We never really seen before a US president come out and start talking down the US dollar, or the economy, fine, when you run up to an election, we've seen it there, but not necessarily the actual US dollar. And it's because we're all so worried about the market reaction to this sort of hike, which is why if we do see a hike, and it is this year, I still don't potentially think it is going to be this year, but if it is, it will be very small, like 0.1, 0.2% hike, just to say, we're starting to do this, get yourself ready for the market. And I think that's really what Barack Obama is saying, is trying to talk about the dollar, talk about the markets, to say, look, we are looking at doing this. This is a very real possibility. So start to be ready for some kind of move. And I think it's the market reaction that Janet Yellen's spoken about already. She's worried about it. The whole of the Fed are worried about it. The ECB, the Bank of England, everyone is worried how the markets react rather than is the economy ready. Because I think we can say that yes, the economy is ready. Okay, it's not just about the job numbers and we have to look at other aspects. But it's probably been ready for a little while. But are the markets ready? With everything that's going on with potentially Greece moving out of the Eurozone and everything that's happening there, do we need something else as a catalyst in the current market situation?
We also had OPEC at the end of last week. They decided to keep production at the same levels. We're now seeing a slight sell-off in oil. If we do see lower energy prices, which leads to lower inflation, does that change the equation for any of these central banks? Because they all have their inflation targets.
It does to a certain degree, but of course, whenever oil starts to become an issue and oil markets go lower and it starts to drag inflation lower, then there's almost a shift in the goalpost, because every built-up economy says, well, let's not look at that, let's look at the core inflation number that strips that out. I mean, there is the argument that everything is based on oil, transferring costs, delivery costs, everything needs oil within it, so the core still does have it in it, but I think what we end up doing is just shifting focus a little bit and starting to focus on that core. Now, if core still continues to fall in terms of inflation, that's when you have a problem. But if you look at how the inflation is moving in the US, the Eurozone and the UK, core inflation is all moving higher. Okay, oil prices have been moving higher recently, but I think core is outstripping what everything else is doing. So I think inflation prices in general are starting to move higher regardless of oil.
Let's finish with Greece. Has your opinion changed or shifted over the last week or two in terms of the possibility of a Brexit?
Not necessarily. I still think this time, 2016, Greece won't be in the Eurozone. I think the rhetoric is too strong this time, and the fact that we've now missed this deadline and the ECB and the IMF have made up another rule that if you owe two sets of payments in 1 month, you can bundle them towards the end. The money isn't necessarily there. There was numbers in the weekend press saying that it's within the hundreds and hundreds of billion euros that Greece has now borrowed, and they want another 7.6 billion euros. Now, I just think the money's too much, the rhetoric's too strong, and we've been going on for too long. There's even now discussions that Alexis Tsipras has been lying to ministers in Greece. It's just too much of a mess now, I think. And the longer it goes on without a deal, the more likely we are that Greece leaves the Eurozone.
Just to finish, surely Tsipras, they don't have a mandate to leave the Euro. So they can't just exit the Euro without putting it to a popular vote, surely?
So I tend to think that it won't be their choice. It's not going to be Greece that leaves the Euro. And I tend to think that currently the discussions that are ongoing are not just discussions around do we get a deal. I think the discussions that are ongoing are ramifications of Greece leaving. They can't have been talking for so long without that being mentioned and potential ramifications of that happening. So I think there is, behind the scenes with the IMF, the ECB and Greece, there is discussions going on, and I don't necessarily think it's going to be Greece's choice.
Well, thank you to James for his input. Stay tuned for more London Direct, but for the moment, goodbye.